The story unfolds with a voice narrating how he has just been reincarnated as a sword. When he wakes up to this realization, a voice in the wind tells him that he has a long way to go. Furthermore, he realizes that he is in a fantasy world where all his abilities are listed. While he tries to process this new realization, 4 goblins try to pull him out of the ground. At that moment, one of the goblins spits on him, and this angers him, as he takes it as a declaration of war. Immediately, he pulls himself out of the ground and discovering that he has the power of telekinesis, which grants him the ability to move himself just by thinking about it. He attacks the goblins. Each kill gives him a sense of accomplishment that he hasn't felt in a while upon his reincarnation. On the other hand, the goblins are angry as they charge at the sword, forcing him to kill them all. After killing all 4 goblins, he notices that his stats are increased. Just then, he discovers that they all possess crystals which he had smashed while fighting them, allowing him to gain the abilities that the goblins possessed. This excites him. Utilizing one of the skills he had gained from the goblins, he digs graves for each of them and returns to the stop he had been fixed before they had angered him. Now there, he laments on how lonely he feels without a wielder. However, he comes to the resolution that he would start collecting skills. He does this because he wishes to become stronger for his future wielder. In a distant land from him, a slave girl named Fran wishes to become stronger as she grows tired of her current life as a trade. While she is lost in thought, one of these slavers throws a rock at her, prompting her to return to work. With gnashed teeth, she wishes more that she had the power to free herself from this pitiful life of slavery. Meanwhile, the sword begins his quest to acquire more skills and become more powerful. As it flies about the land, it sees a monster with tentacles, which at first proves to be much of a challenge. The monster grabs him, draining his energy. Fortunately, he cuts off the tentacles and kills the monster, breaking its crystal and taking its power. Hungry for more power, the sword decides to attack the goblin base. There he sets his sight at the Goblin King, and in one charge, successfully cuts off his head. This causes the goblins to panic. However, he sees the goblin mage and attacks it too, eventually wiping out the goblins and stealing their power. This act takes his sword art to level 3. At this point, he realizes just how astonishing a swordsman his wielder will be once they find him, and this makes him excited. Back at the slave camp, one of the slavers is about to hit a woman when Fran jumps in. With this act of insolence, the slaver commands her to bow down, and she does so immediately. This is possible because of the device which the slavers have put on their necks and wrists of the slaves, allowing them to obey commands without thinking. The slavers laugh at her futile attempt to be brave when she is pathetically weak. On the other hand, the sword continues its quest as it seeks out more powerful monsters and slays them. Having fought off a large number of monsters, he finds himself in an open land with no monster in sight. Getting there, he opts to land and puts itself on the ground to scout the area. With no monster in sight, he tries to fly away but is unable to. At this point, he realizes the reason why the monsters avoid the area. Apparently, the forest drains the power of the monsters that hover around it. Still sick, he is optimistic that a beautiful elven warrior would pass by and pick him up. However, it doesn't happen as he expects, as hours, days, and months pass with no one knowing about his existence. At this moment, he becomes desperate to be wielded by anyone who would be so nice to pull him out. Meanwhile, the slavers get attacked on their way by a 2-headed bear. Scared for their lives, they command the slaves to stand still and remain as bait for the bear, allowing them a chance to run. Unfortunately, the bear catches up with one of them and kills him, freeing the slaves from his command. This allows the slaves a chance to run away. Fran, however, tries to attack the bear with a stick, but it hits her as she lands right in front of the sword. Determined to be strong, she grabs the sword, and this allows him a chance to communicate with her using telepathy. Just as she is about to pull it out, the bear approaches her, but in a split moment, and just as the bear is about to get her, she pulls it out and flies into the air. With the sword in her hands, he tells her to equip him and unlock its full potential. When she does this, she acquires extraordinary swordsmanship and skills that make her strong enough to charge at the monster and eventually slay the beast. With the monster dead, the second slaver reveals himself and commands her to hand over the sword. However, using telekinesis, the sword kills the slaver and frees her once again from her bond as a slave. After that, he begs her to be his wielder, and she accepts wholeheartedly, as the two seem to have found what they have always wanted, a wielder for the sword and power for Fran. How extraordinary do you think this partnership between Fran and the sword would be? Fran, a young girl from the Cat clan, meets an S-level adventurer who reincarnated into a sword. and uses the sword to attack some goblins, and also finds out the sword has telepathy, which could make them communicate effectively. She starts calling the sword Teacher since he teaches her all she needs to know. After a battle, she cleans him with respect, and Teacher determines in his heart to do anything to support and help Fran. After this, Fran walks away mindlessly and finds some goblins. The goblins are fighting against an adventurer, Rendell, who is guarding a man on his mission to Alessa. Fran removes the sword and swings it without mercy, thereby killing all of the goblins. The surviving goblin runs away to tell the others of the risk. After the fight, Teacher tells him to conceal the fact that they can communicate with each other. And also, Rendell comes to her to appreciate her for saving him and tells her he is going to Alessa. He asks if she will follow them, but she at first thinks that he wants to give her a lift. Teacher tells her the adventurer wants her to keep protecting them until they reach Alessa, and she accepts to follow him. She enters his cart, and as they talk, he tells them that there is strife in the Moru Plains. Fran doesn't understand what he means. He further explains that Maru Plains is an A-list magic realm, and due to the fight at Maru Plains, the weaker demons are outside in the forest and the strong ones inside. Teacher immediately finds out he is the cause of the fight. Rendell continues and tells them the fight is a result of the death of an S-ranked adventurer, Fenrir. And just as Teacher had said, he is the cause. Fran asks Rendell if he knows anything about the magic sword just so Teacher will know his history. But Rendell says he doesn't know much about it. As they journey, Rendell talks about adventurers and their journey. He tells Fran that adventurers are warriors who take missions to kill demons for a sum of money. And Fran gets interested in being an adventurer. She finds out she will earn a lot of money and she needs it. As they arrive at Alessa, Teacher sees several other weapons with great classes like him, and wonders if he is that important. But Fran tells him he is the awesome sword that saved her, so he's important. They walk towards the Adventurer Guild. The receptionist, Nell, a young girl who wears glasses, is angry at all the adventurers at the guild because of how some of them speak to her, but she keeps her cool. Fran arrives to meet her, and when Fran tells her she wants to join the guild, she calmly tells Fran that she is too young for such a mission, as being an adventurer is risky. Fran insists on her choice, so she tells Fran that a test is usually done before an adventurer is admitted, and asks if Fran wants to do the test. She takes Fran to Donodrond, the examiner with so much magical strength that his aura frightens anyone that comes to him. Nell assumes that Donodrond's appearance would make Fran fidget, but Fran remains calm. Teacher reads all of Donodrond's strengths and finds out he is much stronger than them, and he will probably be the strongest person Fran has fought yet. But Fran determines to fight. Donodrond makes his first attack, and shockingly Fran dodges it. She jumps on the mountain as he attempts to hit her again. She dodges all the attacks until she sees her sword, technique, and dragonfly to defeat Donodrond. Nell is shocked at this and she asks who Fran is. Eventually Fran is taken to Klimt, the head of the guild, who asks for the secret of her skill, but she tells him she can't tell him. He admits her and takes her to the crystal. They ask her to choose a class she wishes. But when they check the class she qualifies for, they find out she qualifies for several classes. She chooses the Sword Mage class and collects her Adventurer card. She goes to speak with Nell and purposefully throws out all her demon possession from the demon she has killed. She sells it at the guild and gets 195,000 gold. She walks away to get a place to sleep, but some poor adventurers try to attack her. She ignores them based on the teacher's advice, but they do not stop. They call her a thief and remind her she is from the stupid Black Cat clan. They say she planned with Nell to get her possessions sold at a high rate. When Nell comes to correct that initiative, they attempt to attack Nell. Fran defends Nell but doesn't use her weapon. She fights with her hands and leaves. Nell orders that the adventurer pay damages of 100,000 gold, else they won't leave. As Fran walks away, a dwarf adventurer with appraisal skills figures that her sword is a living, intelligent sword. Fran and her teacher are heading to the market to get some items to embark on their journey. They begin to look for a good store to get some armor for Fran to use in her adventures. As they move around the market, Garus walks up to them and tells them to come and purchase armor from his store. Fran's teacher uses an appraisal to get information about Garus. Fran uses her mind to communicate with her teacher for a while, and they both decide to follow him to his store and check out his armor. Garus tells her that he would love to sell her his armor because she is worthy of it. Fran and her teacher walk into the store and they both see a variety of weapons which will be useful in their adventures. Fran tries out the new armor and her teacher encourages her to get it. This makes her very happy. Garu suddenly begins to pay more attention to her sword because he has God's sight, and he can see that her sword is no ordinary sword. Fran's teacher suddenly speaks out, affirming that the blacksmith is correct in his suspicions. Her teacher asks about a sword in his shop and he decides to give it a test to see how strong it can hold. Garus becomes amazed at how powerful her sword is after Fran uses it to cut his blade in half. Garus analyzes her attack and her teacher begins to acknowledge the blacksmith as a nice guy. Garus also goes ahead to tell them about a legendary sword formed by a great and legendary blacksmith, who is capable of making swords that can tear the skies. Fran's teacher begins to wonder if he is made by a legendary blacksmith, but Garus tells him he is not a legendary sword, and Fran's teacher apologizes for suggesting it. He then asks the blacksmith if he can make a scabbard, which Garus in reply promises to make them the best scabbard there is. Fran's teacher suddenly provides him with a lot of equipment and that they could use to make the scabbard, and Garus becomes surprised. Garus notices that the materials are from D and C rank monsters and promises to make stronger armor with the materials. Fran's teacher tells Garus that they do not have much money, and Garus suggests they pay him with materials. Garus sees it as a means to make more money from other adventurers while he makes equipment for Fran. Garus tells them to give him a month and their scabbard will be ready. Fran thanks him and they leave the shop. On their way out, Fran's teacher suggests that Fran get some undergarments. Fran begins to think about it when suddenly she hears a call from a lady. Fran is called to come into the shop to have a look at her beautiful undergarments. The shop attendant shows Fran some beautiful panties that will suit her well while she goes ahead to try out other outfits in the shop. Fran departs from the shop after getting all she needed from the shop. After leaving the shop, Fran's teacher suggests they get some food items and cooking equipment. They head to the saber-tooth shop and they meet a huge man named Rufus. Rufus tells them that it is a general store and he tells them to have a look around and get whatever they want. Fran's teacher uses his power and notices that he is an adventurer, making Fran ask him about his adventures. Rufus admits being an adventurer, but tells her he has retired 3 years ago and tells her to help herself with all they need in the store. Fran and her teacher finish up getting all they need from the store. Fran's teacher then promises her to make a very wonderful meal and tells her to get an inn where they can stay. Fran uses the guild card to get an inn since she is still little and they will not allow a little girl in an inn without an adult. They arrive in the room. Fran becomes very excited on seeing the room as she had not slept in that kind of bed before. Her teacher promises her that he will make sure she continues to sleep in a bed as good as that henceforth. Her teacher then proceeds to make her dinner and prepares fried meat for her using all of the spices and ingredients they bought from the store. Fran tastes the food and thanks her teacher for making her a wonderful dinner. After eating, Fran's teacher begins to inform her of her plans for the next day and all she will be doing to have a great adventure. He also discusses how they plan on using their Evo points in the future. While talking, he notices that Fran has fallen asleep and he uses a blanket to cover her up. The next day, Fran's teacher begins to take her into the wild to get a lot of herbs and fruits that could be useful to her on her adventure. They begin to gather a lot of items and store them in their magical storage. Suddenly, they hear a battle nearby. Fran stops what she's doing and rushes down to where they are fighting to see what's going on. Lily, Errol, and Eustace are battling a group of goblins in the forest. Fran notices that they are outnumbered and she rushes to help them. Fran comes in and uses her magic to create fire arrows at them. After that, they notice a part of the forest that is burning and Fran's teacher uses his magic to extinguish the fire. Fran then uses the magic of her teacher to battle the goblins. Lily and her friends notice that she is the same rank as them and thank Fran for healing and saving them. Fran then plans to take her leave and they tell her about the goblin stampede and how they plan on attacking and raising their army. Suddenly, a goblin uses his flute to signal some of its remaining members. Fran then decides to go fight the remaining of the goblins on her own. The goblins begin to outnumber her and her teacher begins to suggest she retreats as she is getting tired. Fran ignores and continues to fight off the goblins and tells them to back down. While on the battlefield fighting and slaying the goblins, she feels cowardly and timid, but she encourages herself. She screams that she wants to become stronger to support teacher. She is tired of being weak. She forges ahead to slay the goblins in front of her. At that point, teacher says he just wishes he can protect Fran. He says he doesn't want her to get weak and tired, and he needs to protect her, but she isn't making it easy. He acknowledges that his Fran is no longer the weak Fran he knows. Fran is now much more confident. She runs towards the goblins, she slays them and talks to teacher. She asks him to please support her as she goes to her new journey of becoming stronger. She's determined to do this, and he pledges to support her. He tells her to forge ahead and keep killing. He insists that he will protect her from the attack. The confidence in Fran has skyrocketed. It is as though she now has a 100% increase in strength. As she continues her adventure, one of the goblins successfully throws an arrow at her. As she is about to fall, teacher interferes. He calls the healing powers of his sword, and he heals her. He tells her to forge ahead immediately and continue her fight. It is also worth noting that he is so proud of her and he wants her to get stronger. After killing over 100 goblins, she's covered in blood and she's shattered. She's weak and she stands around the sword. Teacher finds out she's now increased to level 12 and Fran has eventually leveled up. While drenched in blood and sweat, Fran returns to the city with her sword. She goes to Garus, the weapon repairer. Garus asks her who she had slayed and where she's coming from, which makes her that weak. And she tells him she's just coming from an adventure. Garus asks her how many goblins she killed, but she lost count. She tells him she doesn't know, and teacher replies that they have killed over 100. Teacher asks Garus if he can help them repair their weapon despite the short notice. He tells Garus that they have another adventure to break the home of goblins, and they need the sword. Garus replies affirmatively. They narrate how their day went to Garus, who listened with all sense of attentiveness, while also working on their weapon. It turns out that before they return home in the evening, someone takes them toward a hideout or home of goblins. As Fran is about to enter, having kept on her fight armor, she tells teacher that she is going to go in, but teacher stops her. He tells her it's late and they are tired. He tells her that she should gather the reward for the day's hunt and they should use it to renew their strength before returning home. As they're about to do that, a team of adventurers walks toward them. One of them asks Fran if she has single-handedly destroyed all the goblins. Then they say if she could kill those goblins, then she could rank in the same category as rank D adventurer. The question made it seem like she didn't want to answer it, so she changes the conversation and talks about the goblin nest. She tells them there's a goblin nest in that place, and she thinks there are several high-leveled goblins there. However, when one of the adventurers looks at the place, he says that there was nothing like a nest there, about a month ago. And that can't be a nest, it's a dungeon. She attempts to ask for their help to defeat the goblins, but they tell her that the guild leader is asking for her, so she should return to the city. She asks what they will do to make the nest, and they tell her they will guard it till she gets back, so she shouldn't worry herself. She goes to meet the guild leader and she explains her experience. She tells him of how she saw several goblins. Her explanation is sketchy, and it's getting Donadron angry. Donadron screams at her, asks her how many goblins and hobgoblins she saw, and tells her she should give them a specific number. The guild leader also interferes. He asks her to give a specific number, and she tells him she saw over 130 goblins and 30% hobgoblins. The guild leader asks her if the goblins ran while she fought them, but she tells him they didn't run. They stayed with her until she killed them all. The guild leader figures that for the goblins not to run, it's because there is nowhere for them to go. And that's because there is probably stronger goblins in the nest. She tells him the words of the adventurer dwarf and tells the guild leader that there is probably a dungeon in the forest. Donadron takes it as a sign of an imminent fight. The guild leader shares the same fear. He tells Donadron to immediately organize a group of adventurers from the rank F to the top. And these adventurers should take the responsibility of fighting the dungeon. The guild leader tells Fran that for her involvement in bringing such a thing to their notice, he will promote her to rank F so she can go with the team warriors. She protests that she hasn't completed her missions for rank G, but he tells her that for her to single-handedly defeat that many goblins, she deserves the promotion. And they are in the middle of a pandemic, so they do not need the usual rules. They narrate this to Garus. He congratulates her on her promotion and tells her it's well-deserved. He puts a crystal by the weapon they want to repair, and it immediately repairs itself. He gives the weapon back to them, and teacher is shocked as how fast it was repaired. Garus tells teacher that the crystal works as a catalyst, and its mana works by instantly repairing any weapon. He says the crystal diminishes as it's used, and teacher asks for the price. Garus tells him the crystal is an arcane blacksmith skill and it's very potent. Fran isn't interested in that conversation. She asks Garus what a dungeon means. And that's what her mind has been on ever since that conversation with the adventurers. Garus satisfies her quest for knowledge and tells her a dungeon is a punishment from the god of chaos. It's just like the god of chaos is determined to test humanity, so the god of chaos sends a dungeon to Earth. The first step of the process is to first send a dungeon crystal. This crystal will draw all the strongest monsters in the forest to the place, and they will all become leaders. Not only are these monsters strong, but they are also given strength by God. Also, it is rumored that gold and diamond are always in the dungeon. He tells them the gold and valuable things in the dungeon serve as the god of chaos's gift to any courageous person who gets to defeat the monsters in the dungeon. As Garus finishes his story, naive Fran asks him if the god of chaos is good or evil. Garus tells some people see the god of chaos as good. As she comes outside, Garus cheers them up for the mission ahead of them. He tells Teacher that he will make a scabbard for him ahead of the mission. As they leave, he tells them to make a landmark during their subjugation. As they go home, Teacher takes his time to check out Fran's new achievement. She's now a level 12 skilled mage. She has the sword spirit, and she has also gotten a new title of Goblin Killer, a title which is usually given to any adventurer who kills 100 goblins. However, irrespective of her achievement, she's also tired. Teacher says that his healing magic can't heal mental and emotional exhaustion and asks her to rest. But she tells him she needs to take her bath. He tells her to go, but she asks that he follow her. He refuses the offer and tells her he doesn't want to take his bath, but she insists. She says they had both gone through a stressful day and they both deserve a bath. She drags him to the bathhouse. At the bathhouse, Teacher wonders if Kat also likes to bathe. He asks her if she likes to take her baths, and she replies affirmatively. As she bathes him, Nell arrives. Nell tells her she has disobeyed the law by bringing her weapon to the bathhouse, and tells her her weapon isn't allowed. They apologize to her and they go to eat. At the table, Fran tells Nell that she had a stressful day with her sword, which is why she decided to take a bath for her sword and apologized again. Nell tells her she heard Fran is also going for the goblin subjugation. She encourages Fran and tells her she knows she will do well. However, she begs Fran not to overexhaust herself. She says if the stupid deputy captain had assigned knights for the guild leader, then the burden of killing goblins in the dungeon won't be on the adventurers. She explains that the deputy leader has the responsibility of picking a team for such a purpose. She also says if Amanda is around, then the mission will be a walk in the park. Trust Fran to ask her who Amanda is. She explains that Amanda Hariti is a rank A adventurer, an ice among them all. But she has been given the mission of going to Maru Plains to investigate the calamity Teacher had caused. Fran throws her question to Nell. She asks her if the god of chaos is good, so Nell tells her the creation story. According to Nell, 12 gods visit Earth to create the Earth. They all add their quota to it, and the god of chaos also does hers by creating several issues on Earth so humans can keep competing and revolving. Fran asks if there is a god of war, and Nell tells her there is a god of war. However, the god of war is greedy, and he has an obsession with power, so much that he becomes evil and fights his colleagues. They defeat him and scatter his remains all over the Earth. However, the Earth couldn't take it, so he remains turned to the monsters on Earth. Fran is already feeling sleepy, so she goes home to sleep. The next day, which is the battle day, Fran and Teacher visit Garus. He shows them a very pretty scabbard which he made for Teacher. Teacher is so excited that he jumps into it. Garus shows them there's a way Teacher can come out of the scabbard without Fran's help. They join the other adventurers, and Donadron, the leader of the team, tell them they have to defeat the king and queen first, then the dungeon master. As they prepare for their attack, the goblins come to attack. Teacher tells Fran to join the warriors in fighting. As she gets to the lower goblins, they run away from her as they have seen she's a goblin slayer. She saves one of her colleagues from dying, but Teacher can't use the crystal from the killed goblin in public, so he tells her to go to the dungeon. The dungeon is filled with goblins, so she jumps using the Madair jump, which they have obtained from one of their fights. She uses the tri-explosion to destroy some of the goblins before moving forward to use Fire Blast. She attempts to enter the dungeon and kill the king and queen. On the other hand, in the dungeon master celebrates that he has caught the humans unaware, but he doesn't know what's in stock for him too. As the goblins run towards them, Fran goes against the adventure leader Donadron's instruction, and she forges towards the dungeon under the teacher's command and by using one of the skills they have gained in battles. She jumps to the dungeon front, and several goblins forge ahead to defeat her. The other adventurers are scattered to fight the goblins, as it seems as if the goblins are also taking advantage of their attack to attack them in return. This gives Fran the opportunity to jump into the dungeon. Donadrond and another top adventurer enter the guild with her, and Donadrond is angry that she has disobeyed the instruction that no one should enter the dungeon without being commanded to. The top adventurer tells Donadrond that they should forge ahead with Fran, so Fran won't get to the goals first and take it all. It is obvious that Fran is excited about her new powers. He runs towards the dungeon with so much happiness that teacher has to calm her down. He tells her she shouldn't overwork herself like she did the day before, and she should also understand that the dungeon is a very deadly place and she is at risk. She reassures him that she will be fine as she has the skills needed, and he tells her that if it happens that they are overwhelmed, they will use the teleportation feathers they brought with their gold to disappear from the dungeon. Teacher needs crystals to get more strength so they can defeat the goblins, so he tells her they will only fight the useful goblins with valuable crystals in them that they can use, and they will avoid the weak goblins with no crystals. This way the other troop coming behind them can also see goblins to kill. She accepts his decision, and as they approach the goblins, he uses his parallel thoughts, and they slay them. He takes the crystal and the goblins killed while he avoids the goblins without crystals. He tells Fran that if the other adventurers arrive and they see dead goblins without crystals, they should suspect her. So he decides to use dimension storage to store the dead goblins in his realm before moving on. He notices Fran is getting stronger and more confident in her ability, and he comments on her excellent work. She's super excited to get a commendation from him, which pushes her to do more. As they continue avoiding the weak goblins, the weak ones come together en masse and attempt to attack them. He tells her that they do not need these goblins, so he uses his double chant, which is the union between the parallel thought and fires javelin, and he uses it to destroy all the goblins. She tells him that his parallel thought skills are getting better, and he remembers the time he asked Fran to use parallel thought. Fran uses the skills and she gets them, but she complains to him. But she doesn't like the skills as it gets her weak. He figures that he could only use it because he isn't human. They continue in their adventure in the dungeon until they find another way inside the dungeon. They figure the dungeon is huge and wide, and they assume the master of the dungeon is probably hiding in the lower dungeon. As they approach the dungeon, they sight two hobgoblins. The hobgoblins run away immediately after they see her, and she rightly assumes that they are going to call their king and queens. On the other hand, Donadrond and the other adventurers arrive at the dungeon. They pass through the places Fran has destroyed, and they kill some of the goblins she has left for them. One of them talks about how Fran has finished most of the mission, and the other replies that she at least left some of the goblins for them. At that point, Donadrond figures exactly what the teacher has feared. He tells the others that for a goblin invasion, the dead goblins he is seeing on the floor doesn't equate to the numbers that should be there, and the dead goblins should be more than that. They assume that the invasion isn't as huge as they had assumed, but they do not know that some of the bodies have been hidden. One of the adventurers asks Donadrond who Fran is. He tells them that Fran is just a low-level adventurer, but her sword and her skills are level 7, which puts her on the same level with high and advanced adventurers. The adventurer replies that since Fran has the skills of high adventurers, they do not have to be bothered about her. But Donadrond replies that Fran is still a kid, and she could make mistakes due to her oversight, so they should hurry and catch up with her. As Fran and teacher continue their adventure, they get to a place where they see several goblins rallying around a particular goblin. Teacher should see the strong aura coming from the goblin, and he figures the goblin is the king and queen. He remembers his encounter at Maru Plains and how the other small goblins ran to the king and queen for protection. Fran is excited about the goal ahead of her, and she asks teacher if she should forge ahead and fight, but he tells her they have to be careful. He says she's going to fight the king and queen and not the other goblins, so she can't go there without a plan. He creates a plan immediately, and he tells her that he will distract the goblins with magic while she will attack during the distraction. The plan goes well with Fran, and Teacher uses his parallel thoughts and double chant again. He calls for Fire Blast and Fire Javelin and throws the fire at the goblins. As the fire dies down, he asks Fran to use her skills to defeat the other goblins. But as she flies there, she is faced with an unexpected surprise. She finds out all the goblins are dead, including the king and queen that she has been excited to kill. She starts crying and gets angry at Teacher. She calls him a thief and says he has stolen her goblins. He persuades her and tells her he didn't know the goblins will be that weak, and he apologizes to her. She decides to forge ahead, hoping that she will find more goblins to kill. Also, she figures the reward for the adventure hasn't arrived, and some of the other goblins are running away from her. She finds a door which she confidently enters, and Teacher assumes the goblins they have killed might not be the dungeon master, and the dungeon master may still be ahead of them. They enter the room and they see shiny lights. The light forms into bugs, and a large number of ladybugs attack them. This is an unexpected attack, and Teacher had to use his appraisal to find out the levels of the ladybugs. He finds out that they are army beetles, and although they do not have great skills, they have high rewards, and they will earn much from killing them. Fran is excited to get another opportunity to show forth herself after Teacher has stolen her last opportunity. Teacher tells her that due to the size of the beetles, he will use his telekinesis to join them together, and she can defeat them at once. He does so, and she cuts through the beetles with her sword. They call that stage a bonus stage, as both Fran and Master are excited to win and fight the beetle. For 30 minutes, they keep fighting beetles, and with little stress. Fran's joy ends as she feels tired. They figure the beetles are calling for reinforcement, which explains why they can't destroy them completely. The army beetle leader, the kin, summoned 5 with the greatest skills join the fight. Teacher asks Fran if she is done enjoying herself, and he uses his tri-explosion to defeat all the beetles. They assume their mission has ended, and Teacher tells Fran that she has now been promoted to level 17, and she has gotten the skill of a kin summon slayer. However, they both see another door in front of them. As they get near the door, both Teacher and Fran could feel the aura of something strong. Even Teacher acknowledges that what is in that room is stronger than what he had encountered in Macau. He senses the demon in that room is probably a C-ranked monster, Glutton Slime King. Before entering it to face that threat, he figures out the need to empower Fran with more powers. He gives her the all-resistance skills, which will help her resist any attack. They employ the sensory boost so that it will sharpen her senses, and it will help her figure where the attacks may be coming from. Then he gives her regeneration, a skill that will make her heal fast. He also tells her that if she leaves that room alive, he will prepare his favorite food for her. He says his favorite food is curry, and she's excited to eat it. As they enter the room, the door closes, and the monster in the room looks at Fran and says that she looks weak. He says he won't get confused by her weakness and decides that for her to get to that room, she isn't really weak. At the guild, the receptionist feels so much concern for Fran that she goes to meet the guild leader, Klimt, and asks Klimt if he is sure that Fran will be fine. Klimt tells her that the guild is a recently built one, and it can't have so many enemies, so he's sure that they will be fine. On the other hand, Donna Drond and the other adventurers get to the door of the room Fran is in. The mana they sense from the room is so strong that they knock and hope that they can join the fight and save Fran, but the door is locked. In the locked room, Fran sees the real dungeon master, a weak goblin who knows he can't secure the dungeon, and has to employ a demon for the job. He commands the demon to kill Fran immediately, but the demon tells him he can't be commanded, and says he will kill him if he commands him again. Teacher attempts to use his appraisal to get the skills the demon has, but he finds out the demon has 6 secret skills. The fight starts, and at first Fran can equal the demon in terms of sword usage. Teacher also increases his sword power to ensure that he can tackle the demon. It's a greater demon of level 30, and they know their win probability is low. When the demon figures Fran has skills that can equate to this, he tells her she could only attack him because she could see him. He starts disappearing and appearing. His first attempt, he cuts off Fran's hands. Teacher stands up by himself and uses his fire guard to guard Fran and restores her hands. Teacher figures that since the demon isn't using his teleportation, he's using Fran's shadow. Fran figures it out and attacks the demon. Unaware, she uses her vibration fangs and her demonic poisonous fang against the demon, in hopes of poisoning him while the demon uses his darkness blaster against her. However, they both survive the attack. Teacher figures he has used all his secret defeating skills against this demon to no avail, and asks Fran that they use their teleportation feathers to teleport from that room, but Fran refuses. She says she must kill the demon and eat his favorite food, so she forges forward and keeps attacking. The demon admits that Fang's sword skills are top-notch, and he won't defeat her with that skill. He says he will show her something, so he brings out another hand from his body, which penetrates her body. He tells her his secret skill is the ability to steal other people's skills. So he has taken over her sword skills, so there's no way she can use the sword to defeat him again. He tells her to prepare to die, and she also gives up in her heart. Teacher gasps in fear as he watches the greater demon use his imaginary hand and his power of skill taker to take away Fran's magical skills. At this point, Teacher feels there is no way they can survive the encounter, but as the greater demon jumps at Fran to kill her, he tells her he won't kill her straightforwardly. Instead, he will torture her to death for the stress she has caused him. He jumps at her, but she dodges him and crawls towards his back. She jumps at him and stabs his back. She forges at him, and she keeps hitting his sword. The greater demon wonders if his skill taker power didn't work, and he wonders what's going on. Teacher is also feeling the same dilemma. He asks Fran if she can still use her sword skills, and she replies affirmatively. He thinks of what could have happened and figures that the sword skills Fran is using belong to him. So practically, Fran has no sword skills. The skill she is using is a borrowed skill that she got from Teacher, and there is no way the greater demon can take a borrowed skill. With that being established, Fran keeps using all her powers to fight back. She refuses to give up, and the greater demon feels overwhelmed. The dungeon master asks the greater demon if he is tired. The dungeon master rightfully assumes that Fran is strong. He reassures the greater demon that he will defeat Fran, and he calls out strongest elite goblins. About 4 master goblins come out with his magical powers. He orders the goblins to defeat Fran and every other invader and adventurer outside, then they will enter the city and destroy Alessa. As Fran hears that they plan to destroy the city, she tries to process the information, but she hasn't gotten herself fully before the goblins descend on her. Luckily, the greater demon, who is embarrassed that the dungeon master counts him so incompetent that he brought some goblins to help him with his job, angrily uses magic to send the goblins back. The dungeon master looks in awe as all his goblins scatter in the air. The greater demon tells the dungeon master that he used a dark magic called the Black Bomb, and if the dungeon master disturbs his fight again, he will kill the dungeon master himself. He faces Fran. He tells her he's tired of the confrontation and that she is not fit for him. He says it isn't fun for him to tackle a person and says he will instead destroy the whole village, so it's about time he kills Fran and gets moving. He attempts to use very great skills, a power with so much aura that Teacher himself knows what's coming at them. Won't be easy. The greater demon calls the power the Darkness Volticer, and it's like a volcano. He throws it right at Fran and the ground shakes. Outside the war room, Donadrond and the other adventurers feel the strength of that magic. They see how it sounds and the ground shakes. They wonder if Fran is still alive, and they know quite well that if Fran is still alive, it is no doubt a miracle. Donadrond attempts to use one of his dark magic, which he calls the Wild Impulse, to cut off the door, but it doesn't work. They figure out that no matter how hard they try, the door can only be opened from the inside. Inside the room, the greater demon tells Fran that she was lucky to dodge that attack, and she won't get so lucky the next time. At this point, Teacher tells Fran that there is no way she can survive, and she can't defeat the greater demon alone. So he brings out their magic feather for teleportation and tells them to use it. But Fran takes the feather. She agrees that, considering her present strength, it's suicide to keep fighting the greater demon. But she has heard the dungeon master say that if they kill her, they are going to Alessa. She tells them that if they go to Alessa, they will kill everyone in the guild, including Nell. And she doesn't want that, so the Teacher should lend her his powers. Before she finishes her words, the greater demon calls out another of his magic, which he calls the Darkness Spear. He throws the spears at her, and she swings away from them. At this point, teacher admits that although Fran wants to evolve to be a stronger warrior, beneath that wish is also the wish to protect others. Fran doesn't want anyone to die, and if she leaves the battle, life will be lost. So teacher tells Fran that he will protect them and ensure that they won't die. So she should keep fighting. The greater demon doesn't reduce his powers. He uses the darkness blaster to throw down all the rocks in the room, and Fran spends all her energy blocking them. Teacher looks at the greater demon's stat again, and he knows that he promised her that they would win. However, he also knows that there is no way in hell they can defeat what's in front of them. He looks at the stat, and he sees that the greater demon has a high mana, so he can use several magic repeatedly without getting weak. He figures they can't defeat the greater demon with the sword and tries to see if the greater demon has any weakness that could kill him. The greater demon uses Black Bomb, and he starts attacking indiscriminately, but teacher figures he is avoiding the dungeon master. They know that during the battle, the greater demon and the dungeon master do not really like each other, so teacher wonders why the greater demon is protecting the dungeon master. Having come to a realization that there is something about the dungeon master that is making the greater demon protect him, he tells Fran to attack the dungeon master. As Fran throws her fire arrow at the dungeon master, the greater demon goes to protect the dungeon master. They remember the words of Donadron, which he said before they entered the dungeon. Donadron had told them that if the dungeon master is killed, the dungeon will close by itself, and every goblin or demon inside of it will die. Since it was the dungeon master who summoned the greater demon, then the greater demon will die when the dungeon master dies. They decide to use their magic to attack the dungeon master. As they attack with their fire arrow and 4 javelin, the greater demon uses all his powers to protect the dungeon master. Teacher realizes that when the greater demon is using his protection, he couldn't attack them. He formulates a way that they could win the battle. He knows that if they keep looking for the dungeon master, the greater demon will keep protecting him, so they have to go for the greater demon. He figures that the greater demon has exhausted some of his energy, so he asks Fran to stop the attack. The dungeon master uses his magic perception to recharge his mana. During this period, teacher tells Fran that they will set the greater demon up. He tells her to use the wind to throw the sword at the greater demon and distract him while she attacks. As she throws the sword, the greater demon wonders why she is throwing her sword away. He sees teacher flying towards him. He figures out what Fran is trying to do and says he will build his defense in such a way that Fran won't be able to attack him. He builds his defense, but teacher dodges through it. Teacher is planning to attack the crystal in the greater demon's heart, and he focuses on what he wants. However, he is about to hit the chest. The greater demon holds the sword. He knows the greater demon has great mana, but he also activates his mana to break through the greater demon's hands. The greater demon is shocked. He wonders what type of sword it is and his shock grows bigger. And he hears teacher speak. Teacher calls him a foolish demon and tells him he will revenge for every piece of pain Fran has felt. The greater demon sees as teacher activates his ultimate mood and skill he calls the telepult. He uses this skill to cut the crystal in the demon heart, and the demon dies. Unfortunately, teacher has also lost a lot of mana. He breaks as a result, and Fran runs to meet him. Fran picks the pieces up of his body as she cries. She wonders if that will be the end of her relationship with teacher. And while she cries, teacher activates himself. Teacher says the greater demon's crystal is sweet. He tells Fran never to assume he is dead again, as he can renew his strength with the use of crystals. Fran calls him a dummy. She asks him not to scare her in such a way again, and she cries to him. As they catch up happily, the dungeon master feels he won't lose. He goes to the crystal and attempts to use the power of the goddess to call another demon. But before he does that, Fran uses the greater demon's sword to break his goddess stick. The dungeon master asks Fran if he wants to kill him, and tells Fran not to kill him. He tells her that even if she does kill him, he will keep resurrecting. He brings out his scapegoat wristband and wears it. He tells her that as long as he has the band, he can't die. Fran then cuts off his hands. She tells him the problem has been solved. She gives a hand to teacher, who keeps it. She attempts to kill the dungeon master, but teacher stops her. They see the dungeon core changing color and acknowledges the dungeon master is dead. The dungeon crumbles and everywhere returns to normal. Fran comes out to meet Donadron. Before coming out, they hide the greater demon's sword. As the other adventurers see her, they ask her if she indeed killed a level B monster. While everyone approaches her with several questions, Donadron pats her head. He encourages her to kill such a great monster, but he uses his intimidation skills to warn her not to do so again. He reminds her of the instruction that they should not do anything alone and tells her the 10 rules of being an adventurer. While she suffers the punishment for her acts, Teacher is interested in their levels and powers. Teacher finds out she is now at level 25, contrary to the level she was when she entered the dungeon. And he has also leveled up to level 8. He asks her what she wants so he can buy it for her, and which skills she wants to level up. He speaks to her twice, but she doesn't reply. So when she later replies, she tells him that while she is serving punishment, he is thinking about levels. He changes his word and says he is asking her about the curry he promised her. They buy several master skills, including the skill taker skills, which she saw the greater demon using. They return to the guild where she meets the guild leader. He first gets angry at her for going into such a dungeon without taking others along, and tells her that if she couldn't kill the demon, she would have kept the whole city at risk. But since she killed it, he will excuse her. He appreciates her for bringing the body of the greater demon back to the guild, but tells her that demons of such level have a crystal on their heart. He says that crystals are so powerful that they can cause countries war, and they will need to collect the crystal. If not, the elders will revolt. She tells him the crystal broke during the fight. He believes and tells her since the elders aren't asking, he will trust her words and believe she means no harm. As he says this, a fearful individual breaks into the office. The person tells Fran that she is lying and she can't lie to him. Following the great adventure at the dungeon, it is no hearsay to admit that Fran and Teacher have leveled up to one of the greatest levels as an adventurer, and they are, at this point, one of the very best, if not the best. Also, since they killed a level B greater demon, they have gained a new class, and they have earned new skills. They are presently at their report to the guild master, Klimt, and Klimt is asking for the greater demon's crystal, which should be on every demon. But the one for the greater demon has been used by Teacher to regenerate when he killed the greater demon, so they do not have it. Fran tells Klimt that the crystal was misplaced during the fight, and she doesn't know how the crystal disappeared. Following her great works at the dungeon, Klimt has no option but to believe her. But a weird-looking man who they do not know enters the office and says that Fran is lying. Both Fran and Teacher look at the man in shock, and Teacher acknowledges that he didn't feel the presence of that man when he entered, and he can't figure out why he couldn't feel his presence. Irrespective of that, this man tells them that Fran is lying. He claims that his unique feature is that he can figure out when someone is lying. At that point, Fran asks him who he is, and she doesn't know or recognize him. He screams and asks her how she doesn't know him. Then he introduces himself as August Alsand, the vice captain of Alessa Knight. The word knight rings a bell in the ears of both Teacher and Fran suddenly remembers what Miss Nell has told her before. Before going to the dungeon for the fight, Miss Nell has earlier told Fran that the knights are meant to give the guild some warriors to fight the war. But the vice captain of the knights hates adventures, and that's why he has insisted that he won't release his knights. Fran figures August is the knight that hates adventures. August continues and tells them he has the essence of falsehood skills, and he can see through deceit and lies, so it will help if Fran doesn't like him. He tells Klimt that saying the crystal disappeared is a lie, and that Fran should be punished. Fran insists that she isn't lying, but August gets angry. He says she has no right to lie in the presence of a noble, and this makes Teacher more inquisitive. He decides to check August's appraisal. He finds out August is a level 30 knight, but when he checks his qualities, August's skills and qualities are too low for a level 30 knight. He has level 1 sword skills, and he also has a presence concealing ring. Teacher realizes that the presence concealing ring is the reason he didn't notice when August entered the room. Upon checking on August, he finds out August indeed has essence of falsehood skills, and he asks his appraisal skills for the meaning of the essence of falsehood skills. He finds out the skill means the owner can tell when a person is lying, and he also has the power to make his words sound true and convincing. Teacher finds out August has been using his skills to convict people wrongly, and on one account he accuses a girl of stealing some property even when she actually found it. He knows the truth, but he accused the girl purposefully. August goes to Klimt. He tells Klimt he is sure that the crystal isn't lost. Fran has lied to him, so Klimt should give him the authority to punish Fran. Klimt refuses, and he angrily asks Klimt if Klimt wants to allow a person who lied to a noble go scot-free, and insists he will punish Fran. At this point, Klimt tells him that even if he releases Fran to him, Fran is a very strong adventurer, and there is no way August can defeat Fran. It is obvious that Klimt still thinks Fran is telling the truth, but August insists on his convention. Klimt tells him that he can't handle Fran, and that Fran was the one that single-handedly defeated a level B greater demon, so he is nothing in the presence of Fran. He resigns to fate and says that if Klimt wants him to forgive Fran, then Klimt must give him the demon's body and the other loot that they got from the dungeon, but Klimt refuses. Klimt reminds him that when they asked for knights to help them with the quest, the knights refused to help them. August says it's because they do not know how risky the dungeon is, and that's the reason they can't release knights. They had to be sure the dungeon was a risky one before he could drop his noble knights, and now he is sure the dungeon wasn't difficult, which explains why a little girl could destroy the dungeon, so he doesn't regret his decision not to give them knights. Klimt tells him that they are fine without the knights, but the major point is he shouldn't think of getting any of the dungeon loot, even when he didn't join the fight. He insists he will report Fran for disrespecting him and lying to him. Klimt says he is sure Captain Urus, the captain of the knights, wouldn't have refused their request for knights. And he is sure the request didn't get to Urus' table, and it was August who single-handedly threw away the request. August speaks defensively and asks Klimt not to think of dividing the knights. Klimt tells them that the crystal, as well as everyone that comes from the greater demon, belongs to Fran. So even if she refuses to release it, she isn't at fault. Klimt asks August to leave without causing much trouble, and says if he does, he will report to Captain Urus that August didn't release knights for the subjugation. August becomes like a typical crybaby. He says if Klimt tells Urus anything, then he is weighing a war against Sir Holmes, which is his father. To settle the fight, Fran brings out the last proceeding of the dungeon with her. She tells them she will give them what she has, and August expects that it's something valuable only for August to see her holding goblin horns. He gets angry with her and pushes her away. The horns fall down from her hands and she falls too. August angrily speaks to Klimt, telling him he didn't teach Fran how to respect the nobles, while Fran is also angry and furious that August pushed her away. She is flaming red, and she tells Teacher that she will kill August. Teacher tries to calm her down. He reminds her that if she kills a noble in the office of the guildmaster, then she will go down in history of the town. He brings a better option and reminds her of the skills they took from the greater demon, the skill taker. They decide to use these skills against August. She takes August's essence of falsehood skill as well as his court etiquette skills. After taking it, she looks at August and tells him she is 100 years old, then asks him to decode her age. He finds out he can't do anything. Also, he starts behaving like a poor person, and he loses his etiquette. The mucus comes out of his nose. He is in disarray. He tells them he is tired, and he walks away while polluting the air as he walks by. After he leaves, Klimt apologizes to Fran. He tells them August is one of those nobles who buy their position with money, and as they can see, he has high ranks, but he is weak. Wealthy nobles like that do hire young men to go on adventures for them. Then they will take the glory of the adventure and level up. It's called power leveling. Nell arrives and she hugs Fran excitedly. She welcomes Fran back before concentrating on Klimt, who asks her if she has prepared all they need. Then Klimt tells Fran that she should drop her adventurer badge for a change as she is going to be promoted. She assumes that they will promote her to level E, but Klimt tells her she is going directly to level D. She is so excited and shocked at this. Klimt tells her she deserves better, as they are so glad she saved their city from being destroyed. He says he had earlier tried to argue that she should be promoted to level C for her courageous acts, but the older people at the guild refused his proposal and reminded him that Fran is a new adventurer. He tells her she will get her payment, and that they also prepared great bonuses for her great acts. She leaves the office with Nell, and she meets the other adventurers at the guild. The energy is high, and it's obvious that they are all happy for her. They congratulate her on her newest promotion, and they tell her to stay with them and celebrate. Based on Teacher's advice, she decides that since she has enough money due to excess bonuses and payments, she should buy drinks for them. She happily announces that all drinks taken in the guild that evening will be paid for by her. She celebrates throughout the day, and she returns to her inn that night with Teacher. That night, Teacher thinks about how far she has gone and how much she has grown. He remembers that he has promised her curry soup the next day, and he thinks of how he will fulfill his promise. On the other hand, August is having the most miserable day. He is scratching his body, and he's behaving irrationally. He keeps itching his head. He finds it difficult to comfort himself. The following day, just as teacher has promised, he takes Fran to the woods, and he prepares to make her the curry stew he promised her. He used his spells to gather all the ingredients necessary for the stew, and he prepares it. She enjoys the first set of the stew as she eats it with rice. Then he prepares different versions of it for her, the bland, the mild, and the strong version. It's obvious Fran is enjoying her day. As they leave the woods, they see a man waiting for them. The man asks her if she knows August, and she recalls that August is the rude noble that fell into her trap. He tells her that August is looking for her, and he doesn't know how she relates to August. He tells her August behaved badly in the presence of his father, Count Holmes, and he has been sent away, but he keeps asking for Fran. The man tells him August is a bad person, and she should be careful. She continues her journey feeling guilty for what she has done to August, but teacher reminds her it was August who looked for their trouble first. They notice that someone is tailing her. He tells her to deceive the person into a private place with her. Then she should kill him. She goes to a rooftop where she finds out the person trailing her is August. He looks like an undead. And it even took teacher his appraisal skills before he could recognize that he is August. However, she denies knowing August and tries to convince August that she isn't the one he met yesterday. The sword gives her up, and August recognizes her. He calls one of his assassins, who is a blue cat, to defeat her. As Fran sees the blue cat, she gets scared. She tells teacher that blue cats are black cat's worst enemies. Meanwhile, a lone lady is seen walking alone at the episode's end. Some monsters come to attack her, and she defeats them.
Fran looks so scared as the blue cat comes to meet August. Guiron tells August not to worry, saying he will teach Fran a lesson and that black cats and blue cats are enemies. Fran mentions the name Blue Cat repeatedly, and she shakes. Her hands shake from holding the sword, and teacher also feels scared that something is definitely wrong with Fran. He acknowledges that he has never seen Fran in this type of mood before, and he tries to ask her why she hates the blue cats that much. On the other hand, August looks at the situation and assumes he's on the winning side. He screams and dances around, singing that the thousand slasher Guiron, a great blue cat warrior who fought and won the Battle of Lutz and was declared the hero of the Battle of Lutz, will help him win the battle against Fran and the teacher. The teacher notices how nervous Fran is. He also admits that he's never seen Fran look that weak, and even when they were fighting the greater demon, Fran was still optimistic, but this is a mood he's never seen. He asks Fran why she feels scared of the blue cat. Fran explains to him that about 100 years ago, the blue cats deceived the black cats, and they made a wrong decision, killing most of the black cats and making them the lesser species. Even after the betrayal of 100 years ago, the blue cats also make it a duty to fight and sell black cats as slaves at every opportunity. On the other hand, Guiron sounds sure of his victory as August commands him to cut Fran into two so he can get his perfect revenge for what Fran and teacher did to him. Guiron looks at Fran. He sees her hands shaking and asks her if she is scared of him. The scene Fran sees in front of her reminds her of when she was traveling down to that city with her parents. She says that she encountered a lot of blue cats with her parents, and they got into fights at every opportunity. She thought they would die. Teacher realizes Fran's fear of the blue cats is deep, and it's not something she can shake away. Guiron goes nearer to her again and whispers into her ears, asking her if she's afraid. She refuses to reply, and he answers herself. He says she's afraid, and he isn't shocked, as she has every reason to be afraid. He goes behind her, and he attempts to attack her from behind. Fran is distracted and lost in her thoughts, and teacher calls her attention to the attack. She uses her sword to block Guiron's sword. Teacher uses his appraisal skills to check Guiron's sword, and he finds out a shocking thing. He realizes Guiron's sword is an elusive pyroxene magic sword, a sword greater and stronger than the lesser demon's own. Fran holds on to the sword, using all her strength to stop the attack, but she's weak. Not only is she weak physically, but she's also mentally weak and not ready for that scene. Guiron pushes her away, and she falls onto the floor. While on the floor, he warns her against holding his swords again. He tells her the last person that held his sword like that was a woman, and he intentionally cut off her daughter's lip, limb, arms, and legs, but the girl should wait for him to finish his actions before she died. He gives another instance of a lady in which he tore her body and then hung her from a tree. On the tree, he removed her skin, and she cried out in pain. While she is still still breathing, he takes her off the tree and throws her remains into the wilderness for the animals. He asks her if she has ever seen animals eating a person's body when she is still alive. He says the sound is the best he's ever heard, giving him great pleasure. He mentions another example of a woman where he had removed her eyeballs before killing her. He raises Fran and he steps on her head with his shoes. He tells her he can't wait to tear her off and asks if she will also make painful sounds that will make him feel happy. Fran is dejected and scared. Teacher speaks to her and encourages her. He tells her Guron is an evil person, while she is a person growing to be more courageous, and they will and they must defeat Guron. Teacher tells her he can't allow a person like her to lose to a demon like Guron. Upon hearing Teacher's words, she feels more encouraged. She appreciates Teacher for his words and her countenance changes. Her mood lifts, her eyes get brighter, and her strength shines, so much that Guron notices something has changed. He's no longer seeing the timid black cat, which he has intimidated, and he sees a black cat that is booming with confidence. She stands on the floor and removes his legs from her head. He angrily asks her what right she has to look at his face, and says he will kill her and get done with it. He raises his sword against her, which is a shock to him when Fran defends against his sword. He's shocked, but he tries to cover it up, and she asks how many black cats he has killed. He first tells her 5, but says he has killed so much that he actually stopped counting after killing the 10th. She tells him it's time for his judgment, and she will get revenge for every black cat he has killed. He looks at her, wondering what she will do. Within a split second, Fran cuts off his hands and takes his sword. He doesn't know what has happened. It happens so fast that it takes him minutes to recover. By the time he recovers to what's happening around him, he sees Fran putting his hands into the dimensional storage. He screams, "My sword!" before remembering, "My hand!" She tells him that a living person can't enter into the dimensional storage, but she can store his thumb there. When he gets to his reality, she tells him she will avenge everyone he has killed. She bends and cuts off his legs. As he is on the ground, she cuts off his arm. He is so shocked and asks how come Fran is stronger than him and how it is possible that a black cat will defeat him. Little does he know that he's almost dead. Fran attempts to kill him, but Teacher stops her. He tells her that if she must kill him, then she should allow him to take the burden. However, she refuses his offer. She tells him that she wants to be a source of inspiration to every surviving black cat around. She wants them to see her and wish to survive, so she wants to evolve. And if she leaves a man like Guron alive, then it will mean that more black cats will die. He realizes that the pain she's feeling at that moment isn't something he can carry for her. He requests that she uses him when killing Guron. She removes Guron's skull and she puts his remains into dimensional storage. August is shocked. He explains that Fran killed and hid the body. Fran asks Teacher if she should kill August too, but a water spirit comes beside her. Klimt, the guild leader, has sent the water spirit. The spirit tells her not to kill August. She goes to the guild leader's office with Teacher and the water spirit, and while at the office, they find out Klimt is a spirit maniac, as he has several spirits under his control, including the water spirit he sent to them. He tells them that members from the guild would have taken August to his father, Lord Holmes. He reports that Holmes has brought the request that his son should be found and brought back. He says August was placed under house arrest for disrespecting royalty, but he stole money and ran away. Teacher found that August's intention when he came to attack Fran was to kill Fran and get his revenge. Then he would run away. Klimt says that now that August has been found, he will either be kept away forever or banished, but anything that happens to him is none of their concern. Fran asks Klimt if the search for August was an official mission. He replies affirmatively and tells her she has fulfilled the mission and she will be given the price for it, as well as a bonus. However, the mission is a secret and he wants them to keep the matter secret. Both Fran and Teacher are happy about this. Klimt tells them to meet Nell for their pay. On their way out, Fran meets a lady who calls her child, and Teacher wonders if the lady is Fran's mother, as Fran already said her mother is dead. Fran looks at her for a while and tells her she isn't her child. The lady insists that she is Fran's mother and asks Fran to call her mother until Klimt interferes. Klimt calls the lady and introduces her as Amanda. He tells them she is an A-ranked adventurer, and when Teacher checks her skills, he sees that she is 58 years old and is given the name Custodian of Young Kids. She has been sent to investigate the Maru Plains, which explains why she hasn't been around. She calls Fran's name, and Fran is shocked that he knows her. She tells Fran that everyone in the guild is talking about her. Fran leaves Klimt with Amanda and returns to the city. She goes to buy something but sees Amanda. She goes for sweets and sees Amanda. She walks by the way and sees Amanda. She concludes that Amanda is stalking her. She goes to ask a man at the guild if there is another dungeon, and the man tells her the only dungeon near to them is at Ulmut. She concludes that she doesn't know Amanda's intention, so she asks Nell about Amanda. Nell tells her that although Amanda is weird, she has excellent intentions, which is why she is given the title of Mother of Children by the gods, so she can be comfortable with Amanda, as Amanda doesn't mean any harm. Amanda comes at about the same time. She tells Fran that Fran can call her mum, but Fran refuses to call her mum. As they have their argument, Klimt calls for Fran. When Fran gets to his office, he shows her several crystals. He tells her he got them during his time as an adventurer, and he will give her 3 of them in place of a favor. He asks that she takes a mission to go to a spider nest by a dungeon and investigate it. Fran negotiates with 5 crystals, but asks Klimt why he wants her to take the mission. He tells her that some people have been against her recent promotion, and they've spread rumors that he's taken a liking to her and doesn't want to be associated with liking a young girl, so she should take the mission to prove her talent. He also offers to give her a pass to the Ulmut dungeon if she succeeds in this mission. Amanda breaks into the office. She insists that she will go for the mission too, and Klimt allows her. At home, Fran asks if the dungeon will be difficult, but he tells her that since the dungeon has been cleared, they can't meet a demon like the greater demon. He brings out the crystals they have and uses them. He levels up again and gains several skills. One of them catches his fancy, the kin summons skill, and he anticipates using it. They depart on their mission, which becomes more difficult than expected, as Amanda is seen attacking them as the episode ends.